Hello, and thank you everyone for joining us today. Welcome to a very special edition of our webinar series. This is from the home office, brought to you by the Centro Institute. My name is Ryan Manchi. I lead the Centro Institute, and I am your host for today. If you're joining us, I imagine you hopefully know all about Centro, but give you a quick little bit of background before we dive in. Centro is a provider of software and services for digital advertisers. We've got an amazing technology that's designed to boost media, team, and business performance that enables advertisers to plan, buy, and analyze their campaigns all on a single platform that we call Basis. We've got a team of over 700 media specialists, data pros, operations wizards, account leaders, and digital experts that provide our clients with raving fan service at every stage of any campaign. A recording of this webinar and the slides will be shared with you, and we will have some time at the end for some questions. And I'm very happy that you joined us today. So as we get into it, even at a time when we're actively self-isolating, I feel like if we're intentional and we're proactive, we can become even more connected with our colleagues, with our peers, our clients, our partners, and even our families. So over the next 4 weeks, I'll be hosting this webinar mini-series as we look at industries in flux. Over the course of 30 minutes, you'll hear insights, some recommendations based upon some of these new consumer trends that we're seeing and some of these changes in media consumption, as well as areas where many of our clients are seeing some wins because we all need a little bit of positivity in our lives. Today, we're starting with the advertising industry. Next week, we'll dig into quick serve restaurants, then pharma and healthcare, consumer packaged goods, and then conclude with education and e-learning. Each of these industries are facing unprecedented challenges, but also massive, massive opportunity. So I'm super excited about our featured guest and presenter for today, Tyler Kelly, who was employee number 4 at Centro a little over 15 years ago, and today leads all of software and service sales teams at Centro, as well as our managed services organization. He oversees a team of more than 150 of the industry's finest sales professionals, as well as 300 of the most strategic media services specialists. He's a pretty good golfer, an avid tennis player, and an overall nice guy. So with that, I will hand it off to Tyler. I hope I covered everything you wanted me to say about you, Tyler, but I'll let you take it from here.
Thanks so much, Ryan. Yeah, definitely unprecedented times. I'm lucky that I get to talk to a lot of leaders, but also with over 1,000 clients, get to see kind of where the opportunities are, also where we're seeing obviously strong pullback from the industry. Overall this year, we were anticipating over $660 million or $1 billion in advertising spend this year. And obviously due to COVID, that is going to drastically decrease. But as we go through the presentation today, I do believe that, hopefully we'll show you some areas where we think there's great optimism and approach to how do we come out of this pandemic the best way possible. So today we'll be covering management through crisis, media consumption opportunities that we see out there. And then what I'm most excited about is the open Q&A and to really hear from you all. So please use the chat box to ask any questions. I will hopefully answer them as transparently as possible as we move through today. So as we hop into the management through crisis, first I want to, and hopefully everyone is seeing just, I think, an amazing amount of collaboration, camaraderie, the industry really coming together through happy hours, through joint meetings, utilizing video. I've never been more proficient, I think, at video than I am today. But the team's really coming together. And as we talk to our company and the way that we approach it as an executive team is really 3 main areas. One is protect your company at all costs. Obviously, if you don't have a company at the outset of this, then there's issues. But number 2 is really protect your employees. The companies that protect their employees, that keep them, always tend to come out stronger on the back of any adversity that comes their way. And we always put our employees number 1. Right now, we've got to put company number 1, but employees are high on our list. And then lastly, exit stronger. I've been here for over 15 years, gone through two major recessionary periods, and we've always come out stronger. Right now is the time to work harder, to show everyone that you're focused and that you're going to be there. But the three areas that I'd like to dive into a little bit is flexibility. First is flexibility, operate anywhere, adaptive tactics. This is really where we've been lucky, and hopefully a lot of you have seen bases come through in a big way, where you can work anywhere, flex environment. It's something we've been talking about a lot, but now we had to really put into practice with shelter in place across this country. I think that's been really good. Empathy, number two. How are we supporting our teams internally? How are you reaching out to your customer base? How are you approaching prospective clients as this time of need? And empathy couldn't be at a greater position right now. But then lastly, outcome. People are great with empathy. They want to have the understanding, but also people are looking at how can we be stronger? One of the calls we had earlier today was people are really looking for leadership, looking for what to do. How do they come out of this stronger, just like we are? So hopefully we'll hit a couple of those points today. But if I can really push one thing through today is to be that leader, have that thought leadership, and make sure that your clients know that you are very comfortable within this time of uncertainty. As we go into media consumption, really what we're seeing is an overwhelmingly increase in digital within TV, and viewership is just at an all-time high. We're seeing streaming going up tremendously. Connected TV is up quite a bit, but if you can see here, 22% of web traffic is up. You see the subscriber base, 12% uptick in video streams, and then also with the lack of sports right now, we're seeing that as a decline. But it's also an opportunity, I think, for all of us to really look at as we move forward within this. As we hop into advertising opportunities, and this is really where I think we're seeing the most and where I'm spending the most amount of my time. When obviously the pandemic hit, the first 2 weeks, I think we saw everyone pause, pull back, and really start to look at their strategy. The main areas that we were hit is sports and entertainment, travel, tourism, food and drink, and finance were probably the ones that hit us the most from a overall financial impact. Be interesting to hear where everybody else is seeing that. And then on the upside, religious and spirituality, with churches going towards video versus internally. We've seen a big uptick in that. Education, online education's been very big. Home and garden, CPG, areas where people are doing things at home and buying product, we're seeing really come through in a big way right now. And if there's one thing I could stress, and I think we need to stress, is to stay calm. Overall, I'm very optimistic with the industry and where we're going. I think by the White House and the government putting the shelter in place and putting a time of over a month, what we've seen is the first 2 weeks, everyone pausing. Now we're seeing people really change their creative and their messaging. And we're seeing people now knowing that they have to do that because the timeline starts to reemerge within the marketplace. We're seeing this through many categories that we'll get into. But right now, we're seeing that advertisers, and in any recessionary period, people who advertise tend to come out stronger on the back end. There's less noise, there's less competition. What we're telling all of our advertisers is now is the time to be out, but be out with the right messaging. Have that empathy, have that characteristic, and we'll go into a couple examples of that. One of the first areas impacted, obviously, were events. This is not just the large sports events or the Olympics, but also B2B events. This is an area where we've seen opportunity that I think was kind of an adjacent possibility we need to think about. But with a lot of B2B companies that really just use events as their marketing budget now have to find different ways. So we're really looking at how do we push that into more digital aspects, TV, other areas where they can get their message out and really reach their core consumer, whether that's through audience-based targeting, through geofencing, areas that historically they hadn't looked at, but now they need to figure out how do they continue to market through this downtime in the economy. Some of the industries that we're seeing really bounce back faster, some that I alluded to. CPG, 35% decrease in in-store traffic, but that also allows for orders, right? We're seeing people go and pick up. Education and learning. Online education is thriving right now as schools across country are moving to this and getting proficient in it faster than they ever thought they could. Healthcare. People are really now, I think, open to telemedicine more than ever. And I think you're going to see that as a big push as we hit into the second half of this year. And QSR restaurant, yeah, they've closed, but with QSRs and people buying more in-house, we're seeing that as a big uptick, not just from a product, but also from a food consumption basis. So we're talking to all of these categories. And then lastly, cannabis. We've seen a 20% surge in in-home deliveries. And so therefore, we're seeing cannabis companies really coming out and really trying to push their message during this time. Then the messaging, and this has been interesting, and I think we're even seeing new things on a daily basis. But you can see some of the early adopters that we've been seeing, which, tax hack saying stay home, wash hands, do your taxes, to the Cures US, just some really good examples of what people are doing. Some of the really interesting things, and I think how people are going to exit, and this is where I think we all have to be very mindful, is this is going to change consumer behavior in a large way. To a point where I don't think any of us really know, but if you can focus on the health of the consumer, I think is really going to lend it to a better outcome in the second half this year. One of the really cool things we just heard about today is Delta Airlines, when they come back and people start traveling more, are not going to be selling middle seats. So showing that separation and trying to get people to feel safe about utilizing your product or your business is going to be very big. We're seeing restaurants in China advertising that they need to be 10 feet apart, which I think is really cool because now people feel comfortable going into those establishments. Other really cool ideas are insurance companies, refunding money right now, mainly because people aren't driving nearly what they are, and they are realizing that and utilizing that as a way to really be empathetic to their consumer. And then like Ford Credit just came out with a 3-month free for purchasing a vehicle. So I think really looking at ways that you can push out your messaging, caring about the health of the individuals in your consumer base is really going to take all of our advertisers to the right place as we go through this. So, to wrap up, and I know this is quick overview, but reality is I think we're all facing this. The categories we're seeing get hit are the ones that I think we knew, but I think there's some really optimistic light at the end of the tunnel. We said that, obviously food services got hit, but with takeout and delivery now being a messaging coming back, we're actually even seeing travel and tourism come back in a big way for the second half of this year because they need to recoup the dollars lost in the first half of this year. So even though categories we think are paused or may not come back, I actually think they might come back sooner than we think. And we're seeing people pushed into those areas with the right messaging to their consumer base. So thank you for listening to my short presentation. Like I said, I was more excited about the Q&A and really getting from the audience, what are you seeing or any questions you may have.
Awesome. Thank you for that, Tyler. And I feel like we've already got a handful of questions in, so we'll address that. As maybe you've got some questions from what Tyler was talking through, or even questions you had coming into the presentation, go ahead and plug those into the questions tab within the GoToWebinar console there, and we'll see how many we can get through. One that came through actually while you were talking, Tyler, from Laura, and you addressed it a little bit at the end of what categories do you think should be advertising during this time? Companies, categories where the message is most relevant. I know you talked about, travel, where there's that opportunity for maybe some proactiveness to get that out there. Maybe it's not as heavy as before, but really preparing for post-corona. Are there some others that you've seen that you feel like are really smart to focus on at this point in time?
Yeah, I think obviously the categories we touched on, with QSR and some of the ones that are actually doing well should obviously be out advertising and pushing those messages. I think some of the ones that we didn't expect to come back as fast as they were definitely the QSR space. That was interesting to us. Travel, I think, was very interesting to us. Even sports teams, which was kind of interesting to us, that some of the sports teams that we work with are actually out there really pushing PSAs and really keeping the brand image out there, and actually being forced through co-ops to make sure that those messages are still getting out. I think anybody out there really pushing any health benefits on the back end of this is going to be really prime and should be advertising right now, as there is less clutter in the marketplace.
What do you think about mistakes? Have you seen or you heard anything that from your 20 plus years of experience that you're like, this is not the best direction to go?
Yeah, I think if you stay with just benefits to the actual business or the advertiser, I think is not the right messaging now. I think anytime you stay with what has been status quo, I think could end up hurting you in the long run. I think you really have to address what's happening within the overall population, the global population in this case, or else I think you're going to look very insensitive, and that could have a negative brand impact for your business.
Yeah. What about, there's some questions about maybe some specific categories that we'll dig into. One's around automotive. This question from Sue. What do you see for the automotive market? What does that comeback look like?
Automotive, I think, is going to be tricky. Overall, we're starting to see some of these with the new credit limits, the credit lines, really trying to push that. I think with auto overall within that category, we're seeing some pullback just because people aren't on lots now and are not looking at cars as much. But I believe auto is going to, come back on the backside of this. I think they're going to have some messaging around, obviously, safer environments, easier ways to get your automobiles. I think really pushing anything that's web-based for auto. So online ordering or pickup of your car in safe environments. So I think that's really where we're trying to push our auto dealers, really trying to get more of those online lead gens to really push those through.
Yeah, I feel like it's really interesting within the automotive space where there's those areas for kind of different types of disruption, right? Where people kind of moving away from the showroom experience and more of what does that kind of at-home test drive experience look like?
Exactly.
I think it's fascinating to see some of the messaging around how quickly some of the major manufacturers, how they've tweaked the messaging and offered not only new incentives but guarantees that if you're impacted financially, that they'll offer some reassurances there of either delaying some of those initial payments and extending out what some of those down payments are. So I think that will be really interesting to see how that plays out and how that helps them not only post kind of Corona COVID, but even now as we're in the midst of it. From a B2B perspective, Tyler, this is a question from Mary. Similar to the automotive question about what B2B categories do you see starting to bounce back, or maybe even I'll add a little bit here of kind of being smart of the shift. You talk about B2B more so from like the event side, but even just kind of across that broad category. Any thoughts there? Any movement on the B2B side?
Yeah, I think anybody who is heavy against larger events, whether that's healthcare, even providers. If you're selling healthcare goods, how can you push that through digital at this point? I think right now what we're seeing within B2B is really how do you set up an in-home capabilities. So we're seeing an uptick in some of the business technologies, whether that's monitors, screens, allowing for that in furniture for your home office, things like that. I think has been a big uptick that we're seeing. I think right now, a lot of the event space, we're still waiting to see what categories bounce back faster. But I think anybody who's trying to reach kind of that business to business, really looking at a strong ABM, account-based marketing plan right now is a very strong way of looking at how do you reach that consumer that isn't in their office or isn't at, at an event, but really reaching them in home. One of the really cool tactics I think that we've been looking at is utilizing location-based. So if you were looking at a certain business right now, obviously you can't target that address, but you can do a look back through many of our providers to say who was in that office building 3 weeks ago over a certain amount of time, and then retarget them now at their home. So there are still ways to reach people in that marketplace. So you don't have to go dark just because they're not going in there. You can use a lot of the location-based targeting that we were using before, just now reaching them in their home.
So some great examples. There's a question from Joy that just came in, which I think is interesting. I don't know if we want to necessarily point a finger and say it's a mistake, but there are some brands, some big brands. She cited Anheuser-Busch of, saying that they're not in advertising mode, and, putting all coronavirus content on blacklist or digital advertising. Any thoughts there?
I think if you're a large brand, Anheuser-Busch, Coca-Cola, obviously I think they're playing up, obviously, the PR aspect of it, and I respect them incredibly for doing that. I think it also allows the way for other advertisers to step up and get market share within this time period. I think if they do it in the correct way. Overall, I think if you have that big of a PR engine and if you can utilize that through this time, I think it's great. Most brands we work with do not. Most of them are more in the challenger area, and I would really recommend to most of them to get out with that empathetic message now, without that really large PR machine, because obviously we all know that they're saying that, which is also getting them some recognition during this time. Yeah,
it's a good point. There are a few brands that can take that position, and I feel like so many others need to continue and be smart about it. Thinking about, I love this question from Bruce. Do you think movie theaters will suffer long term as people look to avoid crowded places? And since more people are now changing their behaviors to purchase streaming services such as Netflix, Disney Plus, we saw that stat that, over a single weekend, there was 250,000 new signups with Netflix. Disney Plus reported earlier this week, record numbers of growth. Quibi, I think, just coming out, maybe a decent time for them. Thoughts on, the impact of, I guess, both the streaming services side as well as some of those traditional movie theaters?
Yeah, I think movie theaters are going to take a while to come back. I really do. I think just from like I said, a health perspective, I think they're going to have to come up with ways to social distance and allow consumers to feel safe within those environments. They're going to have probably heavy wipe down procedures. I think this has increased people's and consumers' view of germs and health, and how do we need to sanitize everything as we continue to move forward. So I think movie theaters are going to have to come up with some new ways to attract consumers. But I do think movie theaters are going to be a bit of a laggard in terms of coming back from a consumer base. I do think there's some interesting things that they could be out there toting and pushing as they can figure out how do they configure their studios to allow for a safer environment.
Yeah, I thought it was interesting. I feel like AMC, Cinemark, which is obviously locally headquartered here, and Dallas, Alamo Drafthouse, a lot of these guys early before they closed their theaters, that they were, they had it set up where you couldn't even select seats right next to somebody else, that they already had that kind of social distancing in place. So I think that's a great point. How will they kind of change what the layout is in the weeks and months as we kind of maybe get back to a new type of normal? But definitely primed for a lot of these streaming services that are out there for the high quality content, and then other types of content, the Tiger Kings of the world. Some questions around political spin. From Kelsey, just how are you seeing this impact political spin? It seems like a lot of the national contenders and those that definitely rolled back quite a bit. What have you seen in that space, and thoughts just on a political side of what that looks like, both in the media and kind of longer term?
Yeah, we obviously do a lot in political, and we've seen a big pullback. We were expecting to see a big pullback after Super Tuesday. This is usually in presidential years a time of more of a lull. So I think we were expecting a lot of that to be happening now. I think it will be very interesting to see how much revenue the campaigns are generating. From what we're hearing is they're still raising quite a bit of money. We usually see, obviously, political start to peak late summer and really all the way through the elections in November. And so, right now we are still very optimistic about political overall. We can probably see some reductions based on campaign financing. But right now is not a heavy political time to be advertising. And I think we're going to start seeing the ramp, like I said, later this summer. So we're still very optimistic about the category and believe everyone should be as we move through.
Another kind of category specific one that I know we're going to talk about in a few weeks on the education side. This question from Andrea of maybe some unique ways to advertise for continuing education. Some of these e-learning courses, I feel like Tyler, I know you and I've talked of just our kids being home and seeing that as the schools are kind of adapting. But have you seen anything from an advertising perspective, how some of the brands, some of the different technology platforms, providers that are out there, how they've kind of pivoted and changed some of the messaging and their targeting approach?
Yeah, I think, the biggest piece is the e-learning piece, right? So, knowing that it's out there, I think a lot of consumers don't know what is available. We're seeing not just a, 4-year degree or 2-year degree being pushed. We're also starting to see courses that are more hobby-based, right? And just educating yourself at home right now. So I wouldn't just look at it as how do I advance my education and career, but I'd also look at it as hobbies. How do I take care of my home? How do I build a garden? All those areas we're starting to kind of start seeing a lot of these schools start to push because they all have those programs, and a lot of them are now making it available on a one-off basis. So it doesn't have to just be I'm signing up for a semester, but I can actually take a course or two just to better myself. And so I think that's another interesting area to go.
I love that. I feel like there's like a positive kind of growth mindset with that as well, of taking advantage of maybe some of the extra time that you're saving, not commuting or not having to travel,
Right.
things like that. There's a couple questions around this of, just what your expectations are with how quickly the comeback will be. I feel like I've seen things where as soon as we get to kind of a recovery period, it's safe to kind of go back out to socialize a little bit more, that the economy is just going to come roaring back. Do you think that's true? Do you think that's accurate? And do you think the advertising economy will come back as fast as it was kind of turned off or minimize what we've seen?
I do. I do believe advertising is going to follow the GDP. And right now, if you look at the large financial institutions, it's obviously calling for a pretty dire Q2, but a really large bounce back in Q3. I think we're going to see a very similar thing. I'm very optimistic just on what I've seen in this last week. The first 2 weeks, like I stated, I think there was a lot of turnoff, a lot of fear, but we're already starting to see some adjacent possibilities, some people already pivoting, and I think we're going to see some new emerging brands coming out of this. But I do believe we're going to see it bounce back pretty quickly and efficiently. As a company, we're looking at probably a 15% decrease in Q2, somewhere in that range. But I'm looking at Q3 and Q4 to be stronger quarters. Q3 probably coming back to flat, if not up slightly, and then Q4 to be a large year-over-year growth quarter for us. So that's really where I'm looking at. That's how I'm budgeting out our risk management now and how we're operating under this interesting time.
I love the optimism. All right, one other category question. We've got a few around this one from Mary. Maybe speaking more to cannabis. I know we had the kind of one stat in there of kind of that surge of delivery and overall order value, obviously in states and municipalities where that's legal. But what are you seeing on that side from a cannabis perspective? As many of these states have deemed the dispensaries as essential businesses.
Correct.
Thoughts from an advertising perspective? Yeah.
Yeah, they are deemed essential, and I think we've seen an uptick in alcohol consumption and in cannabis. Just with people staying at home, not going out as much, the consumption at home is just going up. And I think right now, with the distribution is still staying strong. I think where we have fear in the categories around the supply chain and making sure that the growers are still being able to get the product to the dispensaries is an area that we're just watching. But since cannabis has to be grown within state and then pushed to the dispensary, we're hoping that supply chain stays pretty healthy. And consumption patterns are suggesting that cannabis industry is an area where is going to prosper through this downtime.
It's interesting. I've had a couple of conversations with some folks where they're viewing things like the cannabis industry and even gambling as areas where you've got states that have maybe been a little bit slower to adopt and legalize some of that, from a recovery perspective, especially some of these states that have been impacted so severely, that those may be kind of quick wins for them to get some additional tax revenue, be able to provide that back to the citizens of the state, and provide some of these additional services. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I think it will push states. I'm not sure how much it's going to create legalization of them. I think right now where they have it, I think we're obviously going to see great opportunity. I definitely think online gambling, obviously not sports at this point, but is another category within this that people are utilizing their time and more time that they have on their hands in this time.
Interesting. All right, we've got. I think we're nearing our time. If we're looking to keep this at 30 minutes, even a minute or two over. But I love this question from Chantel, and I feel like we've had some of these conversations as well internally. I've had just with the marketing team of what are your thoughts on how to get clients out of a decision paralysis? We're basically on hold on everything because they won't make decisions because of uncertainty surrounding the virus. How do we get clients to keep moving forward, even looking into, late summer, fall media plans, looking ahead to Q4?
Yeah, I think at this place in time, the one certainty is that we know this is going to last longer. And what we're telling our clients is now's the time to act because we have some time. If this was just a 2-week, 3-week hold, that's a different story. But now that we know it's going to be a longer outcome, it's time now to start changing messaging. It's time now to use that certainty of that time frame to really push forward your clients, and then make sure that you're doing it with that empathetic message, with the right media mix, which we will be getting into in our other webinars throughout this month, which I'm very excited to hear from our media strategist team on what is the best way to advertise per those categories. And I think that's really the where you have to do it, which is creating that certainty in an uncertain world. And so right now, that certainty is this time frame. As we move into the fall and winter, I think we're just going to have to continue to see how this health crisis continues and the consumer behavior and what's changed within the consumer behavior as we start opening up. And right now, I don't think anybody has a real handle once people get the freedom back on how they're going to react. My gut is obviously people are going to be a lot more risk adverse when it comes to health and to large situations. So I think crowded stadiums, crowded events, I think it's going to be very interesting to see what that looks like. Now, if we look at China in the last week, they started opening up a lot more, and they are seeing just mass gatherings. So it could be that we bounce back faster. I just don't think anybody has the right way of gauging it. I think China right now is probably the best way to look at how we're going to react and Europe's going to react as we move forward.
Yeah. Well, great points there, Tyler. I appreciate you joining us today to kick off this webinar series, and thank you everyone for the incredible questions. We were not able to get to all of them, but we'll follow up. I think we're going to plan on kind of a recap blog post to cover off on some of these key questions and areas and be able to address some of those questions. As I mentioned earlier, we will send out a recording of this webinar as well as a copy of all the slides that you saw. As we talked about, we've got a whole series coming up. So I hope you'll join us next week as we dive into QSR Insights. This has been a special webinar mini-series from the home office. I'm Ryan Manchi. I appreciate you. I hope you stay healthy, stay positive, stay home, and thank you all so much for joining us. Have a great day.